This video has to do with painting the nose, and we're going to be using watercolor for this technique. Watercolor is a great way to incorporate some color on top of your tissue paper, especially if you're using maybe black and white pieces of paper or pages out of a book, where you're then able to bring some life into the portrait. So again, we're going to be working with watercolor. You could also, though, try acrylic paint or oil paint on top of your tissue paper, especially just to kind of thicken some of the texture and brush strokes. But getting started, make sure that you're looking at a reference picture. So this is the reference picture that I was looking at specifically for the nose. I do have next to this video the picture of this nose if you wanted to reference it or if you want to find a different one online. And I'm going to go ahead and play the time lapse of painting the nose with watercolor. So I'm lining it up so I can look at that reference picture while I'm painting. And I'm just going to start really lightly with yellow, sketching out an outline of the nose. So I'm going to start with 3 circles at the bottom just to represent the 3 different main areas of the nose, and then outline the bridge of the nose and where it comes up into the eyebrows. So I'm going to pause this for a second, but these 3 circles here that I'm drawing, I'm making that middle one larger and the lowest or furthest down, because when you're looking at the nose here that I'm drawing, that center part of the nose does come down a little bit further. So look at your reference picture specifically and see maybe if that middle part of the nose is the lowest or if it does line up with the 2 sides. But then I went in and drew the 2 circles on the outside that are a little bit thinner, just so that those don't extend too far out. And then I'm going to start kind of blending things in with the yellow. I'm going to use the yellow mainly as my highlight and try to leave a few areas as the white of the paper for the lightest highlight sections. So again, I'm blending that out. And then I'm just going to continue to layer in some values. So I'm starting really lightly with brown, so a pretty watered down brown, but I rubbed off my paintbrush a little bit on a paper towel first just so it's not too watery. And I'm starting to look at the darkest areas and outline where those nostrils are. So I'm going around the outside of the nose and then looking at these 2 lines where it's the darkest on the inside. Look at the angle of those lines and kind of where they're at for your drawing. But then I'm going in and blending that yellow into the brown, so I have that nice light brown color that I'm able to build and continue to add the brown onto for those darkest areas of shadow. So I'm just continuing to bring in more and more of the brown. I'm not overthinking it and just really looking at my reference picture and what's actually there versus getting intimidated by all of the detail that does make up the nose. So I'm just looking at the main blocks of highlight and shadow and keeping it just in simple shapes the best that I can or as long as possible. So looking at some of these darker shadows that I've added in and I'm adding now, you can see that they do just create those kind of simple shapes or almost blobs on the top of the nose that you can then extend down and just blend in with the rest of the painting. So I'm continuing to bring more and more brown into the painting. I'm darkening up the specific areas of detail. So those 2 lines for the nostrils, and then I'm coming to the outside of the nose and adding some of that blending and shading there as well. And then I'm working with a little bit of black on top of this. So just really, really light watered down black in those shadows. And then the smaller areas of detail, I am using more black with less water to make those more defined and build up the layers. So I'm adding those, kind of blending them a little bit with the water. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit of red in some of those medium tone areas. So those are the areas mainly on the left side of the nose and the middle of the nose that are not completely in shadow, like that right part where we added the black. So this red is a great medium tone that I can incorporate. If you feel like it is too red on your paper, that's where I would maybe bring some more yellow into it or try to lighten it up. But again, it completely depends on the reference picture you're looking at, so you may need to either add more browns and blacks into it or more reds and yellows. So really look at that reference picture. You could even incorporate some blues and purples into shadow areas. So there's not too many in my reference picture of those blues and cooler tones, but a lot of times around the nose you will see some cool tones of blues and purples, maybe even some greens around the shadows. But definitely look at a reference picture. You could use the one provided or you could find one online, or if you already have a reference picture for your project, I would definitely be looking at that. But remember to slowly add more and more layers with the watercolor. Keep it pretty watered down so it's not really dark right away.